Welcome back, everybody, to your three-man booth heading into NFL Week 5. I'm Dan Salem with Phil, Bud. Maybe. We'll cross our fingers that we get a Week 5 action going on. We're going to get to our ATS picks here in just a second. Last week, we each went 1-1, leaving us still very good on the season. So bet with us. Bet all three of us combined, you're going to win. Just pick one of us, no guarantees. I will start with Phil for his picks for NFL Week 5 and go from there.
So when I originally made this first selection, I was pretty dead set against why I made it. Then Bud and I did our podcast, and we decided, well, maybe that's not the best course of action. So my original thought is taking the Giants plus 9.5. We all saw what happened last week where they played the Rams, and they were 13-point underdogs and literally were in the red zone on a game-winning drive. Now, it didn't end up the way we wanted it to, but that game was never in danger of the Rams covering that spread. They never got out to that big of a lead. Dallas, on the other hand, number one, they get down big. They can't stop anybody. Yeah, they can score points, but they can't stop anybody. So I thought, 9.5, that's a pretty healthy number, so I'll take the Giants. And then Bud and I started talking, and we're like, yeah, but the Giants score 11 points a game per week, and the Giants and Dallas is scoring 35. So there's a 20-point difference right there. So now I have no idea what the hell is going to happen. I'll do what we said before. We are going to pick against our teams until we are proven different right now. So I'm going to flip-flop. I'm going to take Dallas on the points and prove me wrong.
Okay. Well, you'll not be rooting for them, but you'll pick.
No, of course not. No, just for this purposes, for the gambling. Listen, you gamble with your head, not with your heart. I learned that the hard way many, many times.
Yes.
So the second one, I'm going to take Seattle over Minnesota because you want to talk about bad defenses. Minnesota can't stop anybody either, and Russell Wilson is basically the MVP of the league right now. So
yeah, I think you're giving up
no problem covering 7.
Yeah, I was saying you're giving up a touchdown, but that's easy.
They're going to cover that in the first drive of the game.
Yeah. I like those picks, but I think this is the first week you aren't going to be picking Arizona. Who do you got for Week 5?
Well, Arizona's got to play the Jets, and I'm the only reason why I would not pick that game right now is because Sam is not playing, and I don't know what Joe Flacco is going to do. Right. So, and at 6.5 points, Phil knows that I always pick against the Jets, but I'm not even going to touch that game this week. So this week I'm going to take Cleveland. Cleveland is underdogs. They're underdogs by 2.5 points against the Colts. The way that the Browns are playing offense right now, they're putting up points. I picked Cleveland last week to beat Dallas.
That was such a great pick. What a great pick
it was.
And I'm sold on Cleveland's offense right now. I just think they're clicking on all cylinders, and the Colts are a good football team, but you never know what you're going to get out of Phillip Rivers. So I'm going to take the Browns, and then I'm going to take Tampa to cover against Chicago. I think 5.5 points. Tom Brady, as Phil mentioned it in our podcast just a few minutes ago when we did it. That probably was the quietest 5-touchdown game Tom Brady has ever had in his career. And, Chicago made this transition to Nick Foles.
Yeah.
They scored, 3 points last week? Maybe,
and,
I think.
Yeah, and we're still not seeing the Nick Foles that was in Philly. We're seeing the Nick Foles that's kind of like up and down all over the place. And I just think Tampa's defense is not great, but it is good, and Nick Foles is not great. So I'm going to go Tampa.
I agree with both of your picks. I'll tell you, the Tom Brady 5 touchdowns was quiet because I think he threw 2 pick sixes or something, or 3 interceptions and a pick 6.
Well, technically, he threw 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, there you go. and the Browns at Indy, normally they give the home team 3 points. So Browns are only getting 2.5. So they're technically a betting favorite, even though you're getting your points. But
listen, did you see any of that game on Red Zone or anything?
Yes, the Odell Beckham play at the end.
Listen, every single score that they played against Dallas was I had a smile. And listen, I'm a Beckham guy. I will always like Beckham. Yeah. That it warmed my heart to see that. But what I was going to say is, Phillip Rivers can't throw the ball anymore. It's a sidearm shot put.
Oh,
it's awful.
We were talking about different. Yeah, no, I dumped him for my fantasy team because he's terrible.
I don't know how Indy's going to score points because Phillip Rivers can't throw the ball to T.Y. Hilton down the field.
No, I dumped them both for my fantasy team. I mean, they're an ugly 3-1. First, my picks, then we can dive a little bit further into Colts, I think, pretenders, and Browns contenders, in my opinion. I'm going to back two teams that are getting a lot of points this week because I feel like we learned last week that the riding the favorites wagon is over. That's like a first month of the season deal. So I'm going to go with the Dolphins. The Dolphins are getting a lot of points. They are getting 8.5 points against San Francisco. Now, San Francisco's at home, and the 49ers are a good football team, but they're still pretty injured. They lost last week, and I was quite surprised. And I think Miami's better than Philadelphia. So
are they getting Garoppolo back this week?
They might be. He practiced
if Garoppolo plays, I
still like 8.5 points because Fitzmagic, they don't get blown out.
And by the way, if Garoppolo plays, I have him sitting on my bench. So you think you're going to beat me with Kittle? It's not going to happen because I'm going to cancel it out.
Well, Kittle had 183 yards receiving last week.
Not
so,
ATS picks. Anyways, that's probably why the spread's high. They're predicting Garoppolo comes back. I'm not convinced he's going to do much in his first game off the bench. We'll see. The whole team's hurt. Let me throw out my second pick, and we can dive into the 49ers if you want. I'm also going to pick the Broncos. They're at New England, but they are getting 11 points. The Jets stink, but they put up a lot of points last week. New England, I think they'll still be without Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. They were 6-3 at half against Kansas City and then got blown out. They're an average football team. I don't necessarily think they're going to lose at home against Denver, but 11 points is too good to pass up.
They pulled both quarterbacks. They pulled Stidham and put in Hoyer. And I think
they pulled Hoyer and put in Stidham.
Oh, you're right. That's what it was. Yeah. And Drew Lock's coming. Well, I shouldn't say it. Drew Lock might be playing this week. We don't know yet.
And that their rookie wide receiver Judy's good. I mean,
he's all right.
Pushover. Well, I think their defense is getting a little healthier too. I mean,
I like that Bronco pick.
Yeah,
I like the 11 points.
Yeah, so I'm taking points this week. All right, which team you want to dive back into first, bud?
So I wanted to combat one thing that you were saying, Dan. You said that New England is just an average football team, and I tend to agree with you that they're an average football team. But when Cam is playing, they are an above-average football team. I think.
Yes.
I think if you were to look at big picture here, and I'm not a Patriots fan, and God knows that I'm certainly not a Patriot backer. But the Patriots took one for the NFL this week. They basically flew in on Monday night. They flew in on Monday. They had no time to practice. They clearly were not ready to play a football game. They kept the high-scoring Kansas City Chiefs to 6 points in the first half. They were very competitive in the first half. I personally think that if Cam was playing, there might be a different outcome in this. I mean, and I think it just goes to the genius of Bill Belichick, which again I hate saying, but I think this is the team that everyone thought the Patriots were going to be at the beginning of the year. No quarterback play, mediocre running game, mediocre wide receiver play, and then a so-so defense. That's what you saw on Monday night, right? But with Cam, they're a different football team.
I know. He's a former Pro Bowler, so I'll give you that. I just – can he sustain it? I don't know. He hasn't played a full season in a while. I do think that they – with the expanded playoffs, they're likely a wild card team if he stays on the field for them. Does that do anything for them? Probably. First season without Brady, they make
not in a division where Buffalo is just rolling over people.
Yeah, again, do you think they can maintain that level of play all year?
If Allen plays the way that he continues to play and their defense plays, and Stephon Diggs is playing the way that he is clearly showing that he has a chip on his shoulder, Minnesota quit on me. They didn't think I was any good. He's leading the league in receiving yards and receptions right now. So
we'll talk about a good turn of events for him. I mean, he was overlooked in the Vikings with Kirk Cousins, but it's good for him that he left because that team fell apart. All right. I think we should start with the COVID situation because you touched on it and how the Patriots – I didn't expect that game to happen. but then it did. And it totally, I mean, I got to believe it hurt both teams, but then Kansas City kind of found themselves a little bit at home.
I was personally rooting for Tuesday Night Football, but that didn't happen. I don't know.
Well, so Titans got more positive tests this week. They're probably
There's something going on there. There's got to be something going on there.
I think they're going to get. I think the league found out that they held practices last week.
Well, that's
in violation,
true.
And so I think they're going to be forced to forfeit instead of rescheduling another game, which gives Buffalo another victory.
So I haven't heard that. That's news about a forfeit.
No, that's part of their new thing is that if they find that there's violations, they automatically forfeit their week in the that's it.
Wow.
But so that means everybody on both of those teams gets 0 for fantasy because the game counted.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean they get 0 if they reschedule too, I suppose. But it's very, very interesting. Assuming no one other.
I was telling Bud before, Stephon Gilmore tested positive for COVID today, and it turns out he had dinner with Cam on Friday, and Stephon Gilmore was essentially, this close away from Patrick Mahomes on Monday night as they were, giving bro hugs at the end of the game. So let's hope Mahomes doesn't catch this thing.
Yeah, I mean,
shut the league. If Mahomes catches it, watch how fast we have a week off in the NFL.
Let me ask you a question.
And the schedule. All right, go ahead.
It's like a hypothetical question for both of you, okay? And I've been thinking about this. Cam Newton has COVID, right? Which is obviously never a good thing, and I hope that he's okay, even though I'm not a Cam guy.
I heard it was asymptomatic, though. I did hear that.
He tested positive.
Whatever.
Right. We don't. That. Yeah. There's a little nuance. Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
They play the football game on Monday. If it were the reverse, if Patrick Mahomes had gotten COVID, are they playing that game on Monday?
Probably.
Without him on the field?
I think they would have.
Defending Super Bowl champs?
Listen, there's not a huge window of opportunity you can't, as Bud said, you can't play double headers. So these games, they got to get these games in.
So, but Patrick Mahomes is the face of the NFL right now.
Yeah,
and if he's not playing, is it worth taking the bye now and then trying to find the slot later on in the year to play this football?
I tend to agree with you that they may have just bye weeked them if he was out, or like if there was more than just the one single player, they would have bye weeked it for sure.
That I agree with. But if it was just Mahomes, I think they would have played it though, just like it was just Cam.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
That's tough. We're gonna probably have to answer that question soon, because I don't feel like this is just gonna go away. I mean, baseball had it bad for 2 weeks, and then they
essentially went away.
Well, they clamped down, and I think the players wised up.
I'll tell you what. If you're right about this forfeit thing, you watch how fast none of these players do anything until the end of the season.
Well, I mean, are they going to make the team forfeit their game checks, or are they just forfeiting the loss? I mean, that's
well, if you don't play, then you don't get paid, right?
Was it that you didn't play, or did you just automatically lose? I guess.
I don't know. I don't know. But I did hear. I forget who it was, but they were saying that whatever they end up finding, it's going to be harsh sanctions, whether it's forfeit of game, draft picks, fines, whatever. Like this isn't going to be just a slap on the wrist, apparently.
No. Well, and so you referenced I referenced baseball. They had to play double headers. They used all of the extra days in the schedule. I think the Yankees played double headers a couple days in a row, and some teams never got to the full slate. They didn't play their full games, so they didn't make up all the games. No, they didn't end up needing to, but the NFL doesn't have that luxury.
Do you see a scenario where if it continues on this trend where it gets worse and worse and worse, the league shuts down for let's say this league shuts down for 3 weeks, and within those 3 weeks they create a bubble atmosphere, which we've talked about, right? I said that the success of the NBA and the success of the NHL has shown that if you were to put players in a bubble, they can keep everything intact. If things keep escalating and they shut down for 3 weeks and then create bubble scenarios where the Jets play every Tuesday, the Giants play every Wednesday, and they still get a week's worth of practice, and then you know what I mean? I don't know how it all plays out. I don't know how it would all work.
Yeah, well, there's 2 issues with that. I mean, baseball's doing it for their playoffs. The issue is that the NFL is used to playing on Sundays, and you can't play everybody the same day if they're in a bubble, unless you got like 3 or 4 bubbles. But the bigger problem, I don't think that they planned for a bubble, so you can't just pull one out of your butt. I don't think that they figured it out in advance. Do you?
Well, baseball didn't plan for a bubble for their playoffs, and they somehow figured out how to do it.
Well, they have 3 hosts. They have 3 host cities, and we're only talking about 8 teams, right? So they can play all 3 games, or they can rotate the 3 games in the stadium for the playoffs.
You know, 32 NFL teams.
Yeah, I get it.
Just the numbers, I think, is the work. I expect the NFL to do a bubble for their playoffs.
I mean,
if you take trending that way.
If you take the Titans out of the equation, because obviously something happened there that wasn't supposed to, you're looking at Cam, Gilmore, and that's pretty much. I mean, you're only talking about one. You can count on your hand how many players we've had in 4 weeks, which is almost 5 weeks. So that's really, really good.
It is. We're just heading towards the holidays when families like to get together a lot more. And if they're not in a bubble, I mean, what happens after Thanksgiving? I don't know.
Again, I think whatever happens with this Tennessee outcome, I think is going to really set the mandate for weeks to come. And for them to take it. I mean, listen, the NFL sent out how many memos about keeping this under wraps, and they fined Sean Payton and other coaches for not wearing their masks on the field. So it's not like they're just making up as they go along. Like they're being hard asses about this, which is good.
No, I agree. It was a bad look. The Jets played the 49ers, and the coach of the 49ers has his mask just around his neck the whole game. And I'm like, it's a bad look on TV when everyone around you is wearing a mask and you got yours around your neck. It's like,
right.
I understand why you may feel like you don't have to wear it on the sidelines, but it's a terrible look for the.
I mean, it also goes to show that 30 NFL teams are clearly doing it right, because there's no issues anywhere. You're going to have a couple of outliers here. So, 99% of the league is doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think after the next couple of weeks, if there's any more of this, it'll go away, because the NBA had it at the very beginning too, where the players were illegally leaving the bubble, going with their girlfriends, and a couple of them had to sit out, and then they stopped.
I think a few got sent home actually too.
Or they got sent home. Yeah. So the NHL had 0 issues. Somehow the NHL is just a squeaky clean league.
Well, COVID can't survive in the cold ice, right? They get thrown.
I thought it was the summer that it couldn't survive in the summer.
Who the hell knows anymore? Just
I know. Definitely weird scenario.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see it. I mean, we'll know in the next couple of days, because they're playing Buffalo. So is Buffalo playing, or are they not playing? I don't know.
We'll find out.
Well, we should know soon. You have to know in the next couple of days. It's already, it's Wednesday already here.
So let's talk about something more sporty. Washington benched its quarterback, and
you saw that coming a mile away.
We saw that coming, and I'm blanking. What one team fired its head coach GM already? Is that the Panthers, right?
No,
Texans.
the Texans.
Oh, the Texans. Sorry. So he held coach GM duties, which never seems to work anymore in this day and age. It's too much responsibility for one guy. But
Dan, if you were an owner of a football team and your coach GM traded away your best player, and then you went out 0-4, would you expect to have a job?
Oh, no.
Okay.
But somehow the Jets have not fired Adam Gase, and I think he got off the hook because they were playing Thursday, and then I think he gets off the hook because Sam Darnold hurt his shoulder. Like, they must have just given him a cortisone shot. He went out there and played pretty well after the injury.
Sam Darnold got body slammed like The Rock was body slamming Steve Austin there. He got thrown to the ground.
Let me ask you a question. So the Jets got called for 4 personal fouls against roughing the passer, 6 total, 11 penalties total. By the way, that's not coaching at all, right? Okay, whatever. So
I'm shaking my head because I don't actually think that they did any. I think 1 or 2 of them were valid. I think that they got it out for Greg Williams. But
so last year, I remember a very distinct play last year where a Jets outside linebacker, I think it was Anderson, picked up the quarterback, picked him up, and threw him to the ground. And he got called for penalty. What is the difference between what happened with Sam Darnold? The defensive end picked him up and threw him down on his shoulder. And that wasn't a penalty.
But I don't know why they didn't call the penalty, because the Jets got called for a penalty when the guy did not try to pull up before hitting the quarterback because he was throwing the ball. He was actively throwing it. The defender hit him, and instead of trying to lean back, he leaned forward. And they called the penalty. I've noticed that when the Jets are bad, the league calls a lot more penalties on them. And there is an active bias. I mean, they were in Denver, so there's always that home field bias.
No,
right?
they were in New York.
Okay, then that makes it even worse. I just noticed, and I think Greg Williams too. They are hard on Greg Williams' defense, and they call more penalties on his players. I mean, it's not an even Steven thing. I don't know, Phil. I'm a biased perspective, but I do feel like.
So I was saying before that with 5 minutes to go in that game, the Jets were up 28-27. 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, they had a 75% chance to win. Then the Denver comes out and kicks the field goal, so obviously they're losing, and then you get the Melvin Gordon that was the easiest touchdown he's ever going to score. But the point is, much like the Giants last week, they were in a position to win the game late in the fourth quarter. It didn't work out.
Well, the series on which Denver got the winning field goal, the Jets got called for roughing the passer by Quinnen Williams on a third down play in which they stopped them with a sack. And they called roughing the passer, gave him a first down. And it was a ticky-tack penalty, and the game was full of them on the Jets. I think they had 9 defensive penalties for 80 or 90 yards. It was like –
They had a total of 11 penalties, and 9 of those were on the defensive ball, and 6 of them created first downs on third down plays. So if you wanted to take it all into scope, right, all of those plays that you gave them first downs, they're basically like turnovers, right? Instead of it being a turnover like a physical turnover, you're giving them free downs. Regardless of whether or not they're justified or not justified, it comes down to at no point in the game did the head coach pull players aside, the defensive coordinator aside, and said, "Cut it out.
Yeah,
we're done with this." And it never happened.
Well, Phil, you can probably back me up on this. Having played the game of football, I
played football. I played Pop Warner. How dare you?
25 years ago.
Well, we played quite a long time ago too. But
25 years ago.
I don't know how you actively try to sack the quarterback and not hit him. Like the type of penalties they were calling on the Jets was like the guy had to come at him and just push him. He couldn't actually tackle the guy without getting the penalty in the context of the plays. And
the caveat that I hate about that call is you get called for roughing the passer if you drive him into the ground. It's like gravity works that way where you fall to the ground. I hate that call. Like, well, he drove him into the ground. Of course he drove him into the ground. He's tackling him.
I know.
And he's 325 pounds. Yeah, I mean, and there's not much he can do.
That call. I never liked that call.
Yeah, I think
don't hit him in the head. That's fine. But come on, you drove him into the ground. Yeah, that's the point of the game.
And they protect their star quarterbacks, but Denver had its backup in. So there was no protecting a no-name player. What's his face? Mark Rippon's cousin or nephew or whatever.
It was nephew. Brett Rippon.
Nephew. And he was playing pretty good until he threw 3 interceptions.
Future Hall of Famer Brett Rippon.
Mark,
whatever his name is. I don't even know what his name is.
Mark's the dad. Mark's the uncle.
All I know is that he lit the Jets up.
Yeah. He threw 3 picks, though. He almost lost them the game, too.
So I asked, but I already know Bud's answer. Dan, was there any optimism in this game that the first 3 games were crap? Like, from the first play of the game, they were down 7-0. There was no comeback. Was there any sort of, you got to enjoy watching, right? They were up, they were down, they were winning, they were losing. Like, yes, the competition against a third-string quarterback and a defense that's missing their best player, and you're missing Sutton, and Noah Fant got hurt, so there's holes everywhere. I'm like, you didn't play a great team because they're full of holes. Like, did it give you any sort of optimism at all? Because let me tell you something. We looked through the Jets schedule. There's not a win on this schedule anywhere.
No, there isn't. And I didn't expect them to beat Denver. I watched that game, and I truly felt bad for Sam Darnold because he's a good player. He avoided 6 tackles and ran 40 yards for a touchdown. I've never seen him do that before. He is trying so hard. He hurt his shoulder on what should have been a penalty. they obviously shot him up. He came back in and looked very good, like he never hurt it, and now he's out. So there's no optimism for me. No, I don't. There's no reason for them to win because if they win one game, they're not going to pass the Giants for the top pick.
Right. So the reason I asked that is because on the other side of the stadium, the first game the Giants were winning at some point against Pittsburgh, they only lost by 10. The second game, they were a couple plays away from the end zone to beating the Bears. They lost that game. The third game we're going to throw out because that was just ridiculous, right? They got the crap beaten out of them by the Niners. Then you play the Rams, who put up almost 40 points against Dallas. You held them to 17 points, and again, you're on a game-winning drive. So the first 2 weeks were like, oh, there's something there. There's a little bit of optimism. You play the Niners, it gets thrown out the window. Now it's like, all right, what am I rooting for? Am I rooting for them to win, or am I rooting for them to lose? I don't know.
Well, so I felt that same way last season watching the Jets, and they ended up 7-9. And they had a promise in the first week or two. They had a close loss to Buffalo, and then they got a little bit more banged around by Cleveland. Then Darnold went out, they got blown out a game or two, and then he comes back and you see it, and they ended up going on a winning streak, 7-9. And you ended up the season at least feeling halfway decent about the future until the offseason transpired.
Well, but
I think you got to root for your team to try to put them together. They are in the worst division in football, maybe in the history of football. 7 wins might win them that division.
They're a half a game out of first place, as stupid as that sounds.
The way that
six wins could win that division right now.
I know. So the way that they played against the Rams, considering Barkley's coming back, you can feel halfway decent about the progress of your football team. We always were saying September was the preseason. So now October is the first month of the season where anything can happen and teams are pretending. And if the Giants continue to turn things around like we would expect them to do in the second month after the preseason month, they're in a decent spot to win their division. I mean, they're going to lose they'll get blown out at the very beginning of the playoffs in that wild card round, but they might make it.
Let's pump the brakes on the playoff talk for a few more weeks here because I'm not there yet. So we looked at the schedules. So here's the Giants' upcoming schedule. They play Dallas, and this is in no particular order because it's not. I'm trying to boot it up, but it's being slow. Actually, never mind. Here it is. So they play Dallas, then they play Washington, then they play the Eagles, then they play Tampa. All right, tough game. Then they play Washington again. Then they play the Eagles again. Then they play the Bengals. There's some wins in there somewhere. I don't know where they're coming, but there's potential to have wins.
I know you were poo-pooing the game against Dallas, but Dallas.
I'm really not though. But
their defense is atrocious.
Who's Dallas?
The Cowboys. So if the Giants can hold Dak Prescott in check, similar to how the Browns did up until the fourth quarter last week, they have a real shot of beating the Cowboys. And if they beat the Cowboys this week, they're in prime position to win that division.
So we went through the numbers. The Giants' defense is not as bad as everyone thought it was. They're top 10 in most categories, surprisingly.
They have to beat Dallas this week for you to really have a reason for optimism. But it's not out of the question. That 9.5 spread is deceiving.
Could you imagine? Oh my God, that would be the best Monday morning. That'd be the greatest thing in the world. Dallas would get buried
because everyone expects Dallas to be a playoff team. Sorry, I cut you off, but
no, but not to cut you guys off, but like we debated in the podcast, like it comes down to Dallas's defense is not very good. They're hemorrhaging points. But their offense scores enough points that the other team is scoring 40 points to beat them. Nowhere in any of these games has the Giants' offense shown anybody that they can score more than enough points to beat somebody who is going to score 30 points. That's just the nature of it. So I agree with you that there's a potential of them beating because their defense is that bad, but it's going to have to be a shootout. And can Daniel Jones not turn the ball over? Can they get a running game? Can the offensive line protect the quarterback? Can Evan Ingram actually show up?
That'd be nice.
He's a ghost.
I know.
I don't think any of those things can happen.
So, but wasn't the score like 30-10 entering the fourth quarter last week? Cleveland over Dallas. They were not.
Something like that.
They were 31-10 at halftime, I think it was.
Okay. So,
and it was the same thing in Atlanta. Atlanta was kicking the crap out of Dallas, and they went on that again. And as Bud mentioned, Dallas, for all intents and purposes, should be 0-4 right now.
If Atlanta knew how to get an onside kick, Dallas doesn't win that first game.
No, I agree. So we don't know yet if they're the team that reins in points in the fourth quarter, or if they're the team that stinks it up for the first three. We don't quite know yet. They can't be both. They're gonna fall one way or the other. I lean towards they're the bad team and not the really good fourth quarter team, because that just feels like early season.
This is how I think it's going to go. I think Dallas knows their defense is historically bad at this point. There's going to be a lot of run game. They're going to want to slow that game down so that defense does not have to go back on the field. This is not going to be a shootout. This is going to be a low-scoring game because Dallas wants to control that clock and not put their defense back on the field. That's my prediction.
So, and then that falls right into the Giants' hands. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. But so you want to take those 9.5 points now? I'm
saying if
I'm just teasing you. No,
but realistically, like that's how I see this game going. I see a lot of run game because again, they don't want their defense on the field because they know their secondary might be the worst in history. Like their secondary is awful. Second to Philadelphia's secondary, by the way.
So, but before we run out of time, you mentioned earlier you were avoiding the Jets game because Flacco's in there. Does Flacco give you optimism that they're going to be
no?
Okay, because I just think he hasn't played in a year. He's coming off an injury. He's going to be infinitely worse.
Listen, Joe Flacco is one hard tackle away from being paralyzed.
I can't believe he's playing.
And what I said to Phil in the podcast, and my bigger concern of all of this is that there's going to be this false sense of hope from Jet fans. If the play calling is different, if Joe Flacco comes out and plays differently, if the offense plays differently, is it a product of Adam Gase's play calling? Is it a product of Adam Gase saying, I'm going to call plays because I'm not confident in Sam? Is it because Joe Flacco is not the answer? Joe Flacco is here for a year and then he's going to move on because he wants to do something else.
Though. Like, you think he doesn't have confidence in the guy he's trying to develop as a quarterback? I mean,
I don't think Adam Gase has confidence in himself, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very clearly stated. Sam can't audible at the line of scrimmage. He can only run the plays that Adam Gase calls, which are garbage play calls. Obviously, they have no running game. Le'Veon Bell's probably going to come back this week. Mims is probably going to come back this week. We're finally going to see a deep threat. Joe Flacco is. If I see Joe Flacco throw the football down the field, I already know something is going on because they will not let Sam Darnold throw the ball more than 10 yards. I said to Phil, he's averaging 5.7 yards an attempt. It's third worst in the league.
Well, this is why I joked that Gase is sabotaging the Jets because he's still a Dolphins fan, because it appears as though he is intentionally standing in the way of our quarterback leading the football team. How do you not give your quarterback audible ability? You can call the best play you want, but if the defense lines up and you're not going to be successful, let the quarterback audible to a run or something to gain yards. It's absurd to me.
Do you know I read something today that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what I read, that there was a series in the Seattle game that Russell Wilson's headset went out for the entire series, and he called every single play by himself, and he drove them down for a touchdown. Now, that is what I would call coaching and leadership and solid quarterback play. You don't have any of that. Sam is not a leader on this football team because he doesn't have the autonomy to be a leader.
No.
The play calling is absolutely awful, and whatever's in the playbook is not very good to begin with. So why would you even want to do it?
Hashtag fire Adam Gase. I think we got to end the show right there. Till next week, fellas.